All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome into another episode of Everything is Logistics, this special episode of Freight Friends, a podcast for the thinkers in freight. We are proudly presented by SPI Logistics, and my name is Blythe Brumleve. We are joined once again with Grace Sharkey, and we have not recorded since right after Thanksgiving. So we got a lot of topics to get to. We've already spent the first hour of our available time talking on the back end, unrecorded. So we're going to try this again and bring and start talking on a recorded version. So Grace, welcome. Happy
Thank
2024.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to do the math the last time we chatted, and it has been a while. But they'll get some, well, because we'll get some manifest content into. So if anything, we'll squeeze too much into February.
I know you're gonna be sick of us in the next few weeks because we are recording live at Manifest. We'll get into a little bit of that, the conference later on, but just to sort of set the stage for this show, we're gonna, since we haven't talked in a while, we're gonna hit a bunch of topics pretty quickly before we get into a few different stories about our favorite freight hustles, freight businesses, and then of course everybody's favorite segment and ours, I think personally, our favorite segments that we like to sort of scope out is our, the logistics of source to porch, finding out, how different products and things and animals and people and how they make it from point A to B. So that's a little bit later on in the show. But for this first topic, I want to bring up this cage match between Project 44 and FourKites. You wrote this awesome article and now everybody is talking about it. Feels like it's everywhere on my timeline. So if you could, while I bring up the article, if you could kind of set the stage on what the hell's going on between these two companies.
Well, if you know anything about these two companies, you hate each other is probably just like a very nice way of saying it. They're not fond of each other in particular. I mean, they're in the same market. They're servicing the same customers. They're the biggest visibility players out there, and they've gone back and forth in court for numerous reasons. This one I think is the most entertaining and just kind of crazy one out there. So I mean, this goes back to all the way to 2019, where unfortunately, there was emails sent from, and I'm going to use words like allegedly, because the interesting thing about this case is it hasn't even really gone through a trial yet. It's been fought of whether or not it can go to trial at this point, and again, since 2019. 2020, it would be the best way to explain it. But in 2019, in the summer, good old Project 44, a number of their board members, two in particular, started receiving emails from a Ken Adams, and later on that same month, actually, Tim Bertrand, who used to be their chief revenue officer, new chief revenue officer at the time, received some emails from a Jason Short, just going into just like really odd rumors about the company, saying that they're tied to the Chicago Mafia, that just accounting issues weren't right, they weren't worth as much as they say they are, technology didn't work, all the fun stuff in particular. And because of how they mentioned a few things more than once, it really quickly companies started putting together, maybe this is from the same person. So I will say allegedly, and the reason I said allegedly and kind of showcased in the article how I came about this information is because it hasn't been proven yet in court. But they did tie the emails back to IP addresses coming from FourKites India, and underneath a number of their directors. And one of the email addresses, actually the Google the Gmail account went back to a phone number. You all know, like when you get a Google account, right, you have to tie it usually with a phone number. And that phone number is the old phone number of their current CEO, not his number now. So a lot of people got on me for that. Like, wow, you're just going to throw this dude's number out there. That's his old number. I will say that. So to Matt out there, I didn't put your current number, but your old number. And it was his number at the time. And it's also listed on numerous things online as well. So that is something, if this does go into a trial, they're going to have to kind of prove to a jury and things of that nature. So again, allegedly, we'll put that out there. Now, the interesting thing about this is this might actually be a case that you end up seeing in future cases is making a true statement and precedent when it comes to defamation law. So in Illinois, Another thing too, people are like slander, defamation, like libel, slander. How does this work? Well, in Illinois, defamation is actually written or stated, so that's why it's underneath that claim. And now there's two different types of defamation: per se and per quod. I believe I'm saying that right, or quote, per quote. Now, per se, you don't have to actually prove there was like real harm to you. So you don't have to prove, in this case, Project 44 doesn't have to prove that they were um, how they were harmed in order to come up with damages, right? And per quote, you do have to prove that. And the reason that it's under per se is because it falls underneath the 5 different types of statements that you can make in a per se. For this one, I mean, committing a crime, right? You brought up the Chicago Mafia situation, also the lack of integrity and performance of the job. So there's numerous ways that you can go about that. Now, what I love about this too is like FourKites isn't like even fighting that it like wasn't them that sent the email. Like their main argument, just like, I don't know, just funny to me. You think that would be what you'd say is like, this isn't us, let's take it to court. Instead, what they're trying to say is that because they said this information to someone in the company, right? They didn't call Freightwaves, they didn't call Blythe, they didn't call someone or shoot someone else an email and say, "Hey, this company is bad." Because they said it directly to the company, they don't think that's defamation. So what the court it's all the way now gone to the Supreme Court, which is a very big deal. And Matt Leffler said it on What the Truck. He said it to me as well, like in our interviews. Like this is actually a big defamation case that a lot of lawyers are looking at across the country. Even speaking to Jet, you know, he was saying that a number of different firms are reaching out, just interested in the suit in particular, because this could set some really interesting precedents when it comes to how you're defining a company's role in something like defamation. And so I agree with the armchair attorney, and he brings it up in the article and in some of the statements. It's like, these statements were said to the company to cause chaos within the company, and that should make it them a third party in this situation. And so that's what they went to the Supreme Court about: is that true? Is saying this directly to a company technically a third person, or is it not? And I mean, consider that. Erase this whole thing. Who really cares, right? FourKites and Project 44, but into, I guess, more of like business law. I mean, think of the ramifications of what that could say if this does set a precedent. I mean, in Illinois in particular, right? You could there could be a lot of companies who potentially could sue for defamation and never thought they could get away with that as a third party before. So I think that's what's really cool, is like, this is a freight tech type of like war that could potentially be brought up in future business cases, right? Like per the Project 44 versus FourKites claims, this is legally true in court. And I think that's what's really interesting. And I was hoping that people would get from this is like, this could really set a standard for defamation law in Illinois. And if anything, we know that, right? Like that's carriers, brokers in particular, a lot of them are located in the Chicago area, which would fall under this ruling too. So I agree. I think we'll hear sometime this year, probably summertime, from the Supreme Court. I asked Project 44 if they knew when they would hear back. They have no idea as of right now. But if the courts do side with Project 44, it'll go back to the trial. And I'm excited to see what more comes out in the trial, right? Like, especially how FourKites is going to fight this. I have a feeling, honestly, it probably should have been settled a long time ago, but I have a feeling, and I would hope that maybe FourKites would settle this if it did get back, because I think what we could find out in the back and forth arguments, like some really nasty stuff about how maybe some leaders have been behaving behind Gmail accounts. But so for that reason, I assume that if it does get denied by Supreme Court, we'll probably see this fold and be dismissed at the end of the day. But I mean, at this point, especially, I have a feeling Project 44 is going to want their money back in terms of how much of lawyers that they've used. I mean, at some point, when it first started, I think they were looking for like $80,000 in damages. I can't imagine what those legal bills have turned into now. So yeah, it seems very petty. It seems crazy that it's continued to go on, but now it's like gotten to such a point that like there might be some businesses that can really fight some really interesting defamation cases in the future because of it.
Eh, with these two companies, is this the first time that it's hit sort of the legal realm, or have they kind of been going at it for a while now? What's, I guess, the historical history of these two companies versus each other? Are they just simply competitors, or is there something a little bit more to it, that they're not just competitors, they're maybe one side or the other is, using fake emails, allegedly, of course.
Yeah,
So I don't want FourKites to come after me either.
girl, who are you talking
Allegedly,
to?
allegedly.
Yeah, yeah. It's allegedly here too. Hmm. So,
I know you got to be careful with talking
yeah,
about it, of course. Like
yeah,
it,
yeah.
because
That's how I'm trying to think. I'll keep my I'll keep my personal views aside from this. I do know that I believe FourKites has also sued Project 44 in the past. I can't remember what it was for, but I want to say it was some type. Uh, a Project 44 was hiring people, and so I think FourKites had tried to sue them for the non-compete clauses and stuff like that. Go
okay,
figure.
that makes
Um,
sense.
so that's been there. These two have been notoriously back and forth for some time now. I mean, I think I remember reporting when I first really started here. Even FourKites had won a patent on some type of visibility aspect in solution. And I think that's another part of this, right? Is like they really want FourKites wants to protect like what they feel like they is proprietary technology to themselves that potentially others could be using or trying to use at other visibility companies. So yeah, these two I'll say notorious. That's
Mhm.
probably the safest word I'll use for this back and forth. And I
Like the
think
Red Sox and the Yankees, they're never going to get along, and they're going to probably both be doing a little bit of the same things, but because it's a competitor, they're going to, take it the extra level, or the extra step.
yeah, and it's funny too because I saw a couple people posting like about whether or not one would purchase the other. Of course, like would FourKites purchase Project 44, etc. Um, uh, that's interesting to me. I don't know if that would happen. I either just because I mean, I think the business case makes sense. I just don't know if that would happen out of the back and forth aspect of it. Um, like if one would just rather see the other one die than just like actually purchase it for a discount. Kind of feels that like if they wouldn't. I could be wrong, but it kind of feels that way. Um, but it's yeah, it's. I will say this though. I think that looking at this space that both companies and a lot of companies in this space, not just these two, I'd say even some of the other ones out there, all really have to be asking themselves at the end of the day is what am I bringing to my customers?
Mm,
And like Leffler said something like this on What the Truck, like just focus on making a product that works. And I think that's kind of the energy I feel about a lot of this stuff is like you got some big dollars moving around. You've got huge investments. You've got workers that really want to build really great products. Focus on that.
mm.
And that's why I'm surprised that this has been going on for so long. And I think that there's still in this space, like what visibility companies are doing to truly solve some of the problems. That's notoriously over the last couple of years been like the pushback on visibility is like yeah. I thank you for telling me where my truck is, but like, how do I avoid this not happening again? And how do I now figure out how to fix this problem? Like
Hmm.
that sometimes I wonder if we took that energy, a lot of this energy in particular, and put it towards the product, if we would see happier customers and a better experience around visibility tools as a whole. So that's the critique I'll give both sides if I had to do that.
No, that's a great perspective because that is I'm actually moderating a panel at Manifest about visibility and just
Yeah.
why has it, and one of the questions that we're going to bring up is sort of, a preview of our talk, is why has visibility been a problem for 25 years, where you have multiple players trying to solve this problem. And I think your cat is in the background. Is that your cat that I hear purring on the mic?
No, is it me? Maybe it's me.
I
No,
thought
she's
your
not
your
my.
cat was almost like, giving like the yes as you were giving your
Yes,
speech.
maybe it was me. No, she's on my foot right now. I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a little
Go.
sidebar about, for Grace's cat as
Yeah.
she makes her appearance typically during these shows.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for her. I got a lot of new trinkets over the holidays, and so I've updated the back a little bit. So I've been waiting for her to destroy those trinkets, but not yet, not so far.
But yeah, just to, it was one of those stories where I'm like, I feel like I've missed out on a lot of the details of why this is such a big deal. It just feels like two big companies that are, competitors that are going after it, but it that that's kind of what it is. As two competitors that just don't really like each other. They never really have. So they're looking for, a variety of different ways to sort of stick it to each other. And I think that's sort of just the crux of, operating a business in general, is that sometimes you're going to get into some of these situations, and what does that next step look like? Are you going to escalate it yourself, or are you going to focus on your customers and make a better product? So that was a really good breakdown, which kind of just goes into, just sort of the basics of running a business, I think.
I also just like love the concept of like a grown man like in a dark like room somewhere like creating a fake Gmail account to like email someone. I think that's just like so funny.
Which I don't know if people know this, but you can make fake Gmail accounts. There's actual, websites too. I mean, of course you can make a fake Gmail account, but there are there are websites where you can go in and you can create different images and screenshots to look
Yeah.
like you've sent an email or a text. I've actually been a victim of this. Long story, but this girl was trying to blackmail me and she
Yeah.
created fake text messages using this website and then sent it off to
Crazy.
several people, making it seem like I had said certain things when I didn't. And yeah, it was a whole issue. And so that's how I found out that, these kinds of tools exist. So,
I like want to make a skit out of it. Sometimes it's like it's like a Saturday Night Live skit or something where it's like some dude trying.
just the freight drama. And I love
Yeah.
bringing you on and talking about this kind of stuff because you know all the insights and the details behind it, or I'm just kind of looking at from the side. I'm checking social media. I'm like, why is everybody freaking out? Okay, on to the next story.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious. And again, I really hope. I mean, listen, I'm not FourKites' lawyer, but like, if this goes back to trial, like, squash this because like it can't be good. And anyone for over the team that maybe hears this or sees this, like, I'm not even saying, oh, no, I'm saying, yeah, that was wrong. But still, like, end it now. It should have been ended a long time ago.
Well, let's talk about our next hot topic that I want to get into, and that is essentially around. So how I want to frame this story is that there's still, there are signs in the economy that things are improving, that capacity and the tight market is kind of starting to favor the shipping industry again. But there's these recent stats that have started coming out, especially from Kevin Hill, who has the company called Brush Pass Research, and he specifically focuses on freight brokers. And so he's been releasing a lot of different studies that I'm not sure that have ever really been done about brokerage before. And so I wanted to bring up this tweet that comes from Ben. I don't know how to say your last name, Ben. Sure, he's on
Oh,
lots of
yeah,
different
me
social
neither.
media channels.
Sorry,
Um,
Ben.
but he's VP of sales over at Cowan Logistics. And so he's part of like the freight meme community, obviously Freight X over on Twitter, formerly, or X, formerly Twitter, whatever. But anyways, a lot of these, one key point that Ben brought up that I thought was really poignant is shipping managers still have 33% more freight brokers calling for their business than they did in 2019. So that means you are competing call wise, cold outbound, cold email, all of these different things from a marketing perspective that you are competing with from a brokerage standpoint. That, yeah, 33% more freight brokers now than existed in 2019. And so that stat comes from Kevin Hill's Brush Pass research. And I just wanted to bring this into sort of like an overall argument around building an audience in 2024, because as you know, Ben's tweet points out, 33% more freight brokerages out here are calling your customers. So what are you doing about that to maintain a great relationship with them? You know, obviously freight is very much a relationship driven business, even with the addition of all these digital media and marketing tools. But what is sort of, I guess, maybe as a former freight broker, you know, you worked in a brokerage, led, you know, leadership roles within that brokerage. How would you be handling, you know, building an audience right now with all this new competition that's in the market?
You mean like building my book? Like
Building your book of business,
yeah.
getting new business. Like, how would you approach that?
I mean, I would run on my personality as hard as I
Mm,
possibly can. When I was in sales, I honestly did that more than anything else. Uh, I honestly, a lot of my first calls were like much less about business and more about like who am I talking to, getting some information from them that will at least showcase that I care about them as a person the next time that I call. And a lot of that, right? Like if someone's having a bad day, oh, what's going on? It's oh, issues with my daughter or something like that. So the next time I call, like I hope everything's going better and your daughter's not causing you any headaches and then stuff like that. I mean, it's just like kind
how
of
did you remember that information?
a notes. Like I would keep notes in the CRM and stuff like that. So
Okay.
I always like I always find it funny, like looking at people's notes and things like uh, flatbed moves steel and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, what about the notes of the actual people and like
Hmm.
what their jobs are and like who they work with? And I was always like very the type of salesperson I was like get someone hooked on your personality at the company and then expand from there.
Hmm.
Like a lot of my sales, I maybe wasn't the best at grabbing new customers, but was really good at expanding the freight that I was getting from a particular customer. Because there's like I remember one time like working with someone for the longest and over and like what other lanes are you moving? Nothing I'm moving, and then like one day in a conversation, like bringing up another customer I was working with who was coming out of uh, a steel company in Hughie, South Carolina, and um, she's like, "Oh, wait, is it this location?" I'm like, yeah, and she's like, "Oh, our other procurement team runs out of there," and it's like, well, then let me talk to them. It's like that was after like a year of relationship building, and like just her hearing another town reminded her like, and then I ended up working with a whole nother side of the company. So for me, it was like I like to almost like kind of spiderweb off of it. I was very into there's a company that we use that would it was like drayage data that would showcase like kind of like this the supply chain of a company. So it's like I would start with one person and okay, like then how do you get the steel here? Then who's stamping it? And like how do these all work together? And especially in the steel industry, like you'd be surprised like how many people were connected.
Hmm.
I can tell you how many times they'd get a customer and say, hey, we got a new customer and they're out in New Jersey and they name a city and I'd be like, oh, is it this company? And like, yeah, oh, I pick up there every other week. So no issues, send it on over. And so that was like, for me, it's like, like, just like you said, in these times, it's about building a relationship and your reputation and the fact that you are taking those extra seconds out of your day to talk about something that has like nothing to do with free. I would say a good portion of even my relationships in this job are things that have absolutely nothing to do with freight. I mean, that's something we could talk about all day long at the bar, but it also has to do with like uh both of our parents did the same job when we were growing up, right? Like both of our moms are teachers, or both of us love the Vikings, or maybe I should say are heartbroken by the Vikings, or we went to Michigan State, or we just finding something in common and running with that. And it's so much harder for someone to break up with a friend than it is to break up with someone who's just servicing your account. And that's what I think in all sales is like what people, especially in this industry, when we talk about the human element of it all, right? Like the human element is that piece, is like being able to hit up people and say like, yeah, thanks for sending those loads over, but I was actually just calling to hear about how your daughter's play went on Friday, like, or like gossip about did you just watch like the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City's reunion? Like, wasn't that crazy? And that I feel like is what gets you by in these times, is those relationships where it's like, and I would have a number of people that would come back and be like, listen, Grace, like, my stupid boss got a quote from someone random and I told them like, you're the only person I trust, can you honor it? And I would do my best, in those situations, but I rarely had freight just taken from me because of some unknown reason. Most of the time it was, if freight was taken from me, it was because a whole nother company was taking over. Sometimes it's like, we're not moving anymore, it's the customer that's moving it. And what happened in those situations? I was the number one referral. So yeah, I think you brought it up. It's relationship building, and I think that's the biggest key is understanding there are probably that many more people calling at this time, and are they talking about that fun stuff? Are they remembering the small details? And I mean, there's still shippers that I had talked to, and drivers too, that will reach out to me just because they're really interested in like what I'm doing now, but like we just built such a great relationship that it's like, well, I know that you're not moving my little loads anymore, but like how's life going? So that's, if you know me, it's, you probably have to obviously understand that that's likely my sales pitch is, I hate pitching. I hate pitches. I hate them so much. I used to work with someone who was like so pitchy, and I remember being at a bar. I lived in downtown Grand Rapids, right next to like our convention center. So a lot of times I lived above a bar that a lot of people would go to afterwards, and it was kind of a cool way to like meet
interesting
and stuff. Yeah. And I remember just like shooting shit with this dude about like something so random, and like one of the guys I worked with like coming in and starting to pitch, and I was like gagging. I'm like, you are dropping this ball right now, dude. Like, he does not care at all about what our rates are. He wants to talk to the girl who's batting her eyelashes and loves, I want to say it's like the Cubs, like when they were doing good back in the day. So like I hear a pit, especially you're talking about like going to manifest, and it makes me gag like that.
Well, mostly because we're both dealing with a little PTSD right now, because our inbox is just flooded with PR requests. I mean, we're talking close to 100 right now. Could you imagine trying to meet 100 people in addition to normal, like, I guess normal for us, speaking engagements and panel, oh, woe is us. I don't want to play that card, but at the same time, it's just,
my God,
so much.
Let me tell you how we have the best robotics. It's like,
if I hear one more line about revolutionary or transformative, I'm going to puke.
But you know what? If you send me an email and you mention my blue hair, I'm answering that email back.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
and I think that's
you're invested in me. That's what you're showing me.
And I think that's where to bring it, I guess, full circle with this conversation, is that you have to do the hard work. There are no easy levers to pull in a time like this. I think this kind of goes without saying, but building relationships is a lot more than sending a cold email or sending a cold call. It starts very slowly, and then when somebody is ready to make a jump, hopefully you're the first person that they think of. And it's not just the matter of keeping up with personal details. I think that's definitely important as well. But it's also staying in front of people,
Yes.
consistently, to take it, I guess, more like street level. It's more, uh, creating content, creating video content, putting it out there for the world to see. Maybe if it's not even video, but it's text-based content, putting it out there on LinkedIn, staying in front of people, staying on top of mind. Um,
I want to add.
it's very similar to like a freight forwarder, like
Yeah.
with brokerages and what they're going through. Freight forwarders, competition is worldwide, and so a
Yes.
lot of people give a lot of shit to Ryan Peterson, CEO of Flexport, but he's the best marketer in all of freight, and
Well,
he consistently is putting his face out there. So when people think of a freight forwarder, they think of him, and that is a smart move.
yeah, one other thing I do want to throw out there, and during these times as well, it's like if I was to give someone advice on what to go after, like do not try to go grab freight you can't service.
Hmm.
Like stick to what you're good at. In a market that you can't find, like uh, you can't get the loads that you already potentially think you can get. Like especially like working in the brokerage before, there's nothing more irritating. We were really heavy flatbed, oversized, really good at like that kind of stuff, raw materials, all that. And sometimes I'd hear new reps that would be like calling just like more e-commerce CPG goods, and it's like we're not good at that, like we're not going to have competing rates and van loads and short hauls. Like we compete very well in oversized equipment. So it's like
Mm.
also like know what you're good at. Like be realistic during these times and don't like shoot for the moon or shoot for the stars, land on the moon situation, right? Like be focused and driven and realize like I can build the best relationship ever with someone on the phone from like at least that brokerage like Walmart, but like I'm not going to compete rate wise. So it's like be smart, focus on the relationships that you know that you can service well and build those up from there, because the best part about those relationships is like when the market turns and they start having more freight, you're going to get all of that. You're not going to have to lift a finger for it. And even on the opposite side, when the market flips, like the ones that we can have like true relationships conversations with, we would have a better chance at not having to push out terms or add days to pay and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
relationships all the way.
it's all good stuff, and I think sort of combining that with continuing to build an audience online. There was a tweet thread, and this is very related to what we're talking about here, and it's about building audience tips in 2024 from one of my favorite podcasters, Sean Purry. He is the co-host of My First Million. If you don't listen or follow that
That's
podcast,
right.
it's so great. I think it's in the top 3 of like my favorite podcasts. But his Twitter presence is pretty good, and he released on how to build an audience, whether you're a founder, whether you're a leader at a company. And some of these I really loved, and so I'm going to run through just a couple of them. Number one, he mentions who you follow is far more important, or who follows you is far more important than how many people follow you, which is sort of I guess akin to a lot of the vanity metrics that people pay attention to. I see some folks in freight creator mediums that they work really hard on a video, and then they publish it, and it kind of it'll maybe get like 30 views on it or something like that, and they get so frustrated and they just want to quit making altogether. But what if those 30 people are all CEOs or all part of the
Yeah.
C-suite? Ask yourself what would really matter. And so I loved that point. The next one is you want to be known well, not well known. I
Mm,
kind of dig that one too, just because of the fact of like,
yes.
I like kind of having like a low key profile, especially in person, but then online, of course we're media operators. Like we want to get attention on the work
Yeah,
that we're
like
doing.
nice like LinkedIn trolls for number 2.
um, and then
Drama.
let me see that number 3 was there's no such thing as too long, only too boring. And I think that
Ah,
is
good one.
a perfect encapsulation of sort of the
This
debate around
show.
short form content versus long form content. With this show in particular, this is one of, as far as like recurring episodes, this is definitely up there. Some of our episodes that we've done together are pushing 2 hours, over 2 hours. But people listen to them because they like them. And so I think funny phrase I heard recently is Cat Williams. He was on that really famous podcast interview with Shannon Sharp. It became the #2 most downloaded podcast of all time. And
Wow.
he single-handedly, and this was the comment that I read, is that he's single-handedly fixing our attention spans. It's because it's a 3-hour podcast and people listen to all of it because it was entertaining the entire time. So I really like that point of there's no such thing as too long, only too boring.
Yeah, 1000%.
All right, and then running through these last ones, and then we'll kind of talk about. Oh, there's actually, oh my God, there's like 9 of them. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through them, and then you tell me which ones stick out to you. Next one, number 4 on the list, is don't worry about your writing style or production quality.
Yes.
Number 5 is create a binge bank. Number 6 is the rule of 100. Essentially the advice that comes from Mr. Beast. He tells them all the same thing. Everyone sucks at the beginning, make 100 videos, and each time try to make one a little bit better. So that is the rule of
Practice
100.
Yeah.
Number 7 is pick the platform that suits you. I see this all the time with a lot of freight companies. They want to get started in freight marketing and they decide to join all of the channels and all of the programs, and they do all of them very mediocre and they don't really do one really well. So that is one that you should definitely pay attention to, is picking one platform and going all in on that one. Number 8 is no matter what platform you pick, don't stop writing. That was one of my personal favorite ones. And then lastly, number 9, people don't want information. They want a feeling.
Yes.
Thinking of your channel as a little shop of the world's most crowded market. That people don't follow you because of what you know. They follow you because of how you make them feel. So that was a few of some of my favorite ones. Well, that's the entire list, but as far as like my favorite ones was the number 5, creating a binge bank. And so his explanation for this one is your content should be bingeable in a 1 to 3 hour sitting. Let people stumble down the rabbit hole of you. A lot of content will get no attention until you finally break through, and then your back catalog of content becomes super important. So I loved that idea, and that's not one that I have really thought about before, that creating that binge bank. Which ones did you have any that sort of stood out to you?
Actually the last one I liked, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of like build a relationship and don't like just focus on the product, right? Like they want to feel like they are friends with you. They don't want to just feel like, oh, you're selling them some product and you'll never hear from them again. Like that's just not how I feel like this industry in particular works. And a lot of sales jobs in particular are the same. I do like the 100 one. I mean, that's just practice makes perfect. I mean, same. I think I just passed 550 articles on FreightWaves.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That's what I thought. And and it's funny too. I was even thinking about the radio the other day, and it's like I do that. I mean, I've had to have passed at least 500, if not close to 700.
I don't know how you do
episodes.
that show every single day. Even like during the holidays, I'm like, does this girl take a vacation?
I know. A lot of times I pre-record some of those, but it's still like now it's like second nature, and I think that's. But it also like keeps you fresh. Like when you do that much content, you start to realize, okay, this is kind of like getting old, and you start to like think of new ideas and things that actually make it better. So I like those two big time for sure.
I think too, going back to the binge bank one for a second, is essentially making that as easy as possible. Right
Yeah.
now on a lot of the website projects that we're working on, especially for my own content heavy sites, is simplicity. Right now I feel like there's way too many options on our sites, and that there's 7 different CTAs, call to actions that are going on one single page, and I'm like, this is entirely too much. And so when I read the binge bank content kind of hack, I was like, I need to incorporate this into the website to make it as easy as possible that for someone, if they want to check out, one of your 500 articles, that they kind of you can kind of funnel them in a way that makes the most sense for them. Maybe they only want to hear about technology. Maybe they only want to hear about freight technology or trucking technology or visibility technology. In creating those binge banks based on those specific interests. So
Yeah.
just trying to make it as simple as possible. And so that's my big task right now, especially trying to get that site ready before Manifest. Godspeed. Please, let's get this done. And then the last one I'll say that really impacted me is no matter what platform you pick, don't stop writing. And I think for a
Yes.
lot of businesses, they want to jump right into video or they want to jump right into a podcast, and they forget the most important aspect of it, and that's your research, that's your prep, and writing it down helps you to formulate your thoughts, helps to structure your thoughts of what you're actually going to be talking about, so you don't just jump into a podcast and just start riffing. I can tell every time when a show does that, and I'm not just frankly I'm just not going to listen very long because they don't respect my time. And in
Yeah.
order to, respect people's time, because there's so many ways for people to have their attention kind of taken away from the message you're trying to get out, you want to make sure that you're putting the legwork into the notes. So for like a show like this, for example, I'll write up. It's nothing to write up 2,000 words in order to prepare for, a show like this, or to have 30 questions that I'm going to ask an interview guest. I might not get to all of them, and they might answer
Yeah.
them and other questions that are asked, and then I'm not asking those, but at least you come prepared, and hopefully the
Mhm.
audience recognizes that and they respect it, that you're trying to respect their time as well. So the writing one was a big one to me is don't stop writing, because writing is thinking. Good writing is good thinking. Writing is like a doctor's checkup for your brain. So
Yeah.
that was my favorite one. Any others that you wanted to point out, or is you ready to move on to favorite freight businesses and hustles?
Uh, well, I actually have an advice one. Do you want to bring that up?
Oh,
Do you
sure.
want? So I will say for the audience that Blythe said, cringy people we love to take advice from in this segment. She forgot the cringy aspect just a second ago, but uh, so I said yes, I know the answer to this one, um, because I'm a big fan, and you can hold this against me as much as you want. But the number one person who I love to take advice from is the number one momager of all fucking time. I'm just gonna swear. And if you don't believe me, check her bank account, because I don't want to hear anyone's Kardashians haven't made their money. The Kardashians have made their money. They're in our brain. There's products back there behind me that have their names all over it. They've got me hooked. They've got you hooked. Don't even lie. We love them. They're America's first family. And who's leading that family? The mastermind behind it all, Miss Kris freaking Jenner. And this is like her number one quote of all time. And I think this deals with this industry and pretty much any sales job ever. So let's roll this Forbes clip, by the way.
Any tips that you have to negotiating effectively? Like how do you do it?
Well, if somebody says no, you're talking to the wrong person. That's always my motto. But I think in a negotiation, a great negotiation is when both sides win. If you can give a little and they can give a little and you can come to terms. It's interesting you asked me this question, because I had a meeting this morning with somebody that we were negotiating with for one of my daughters about a year and a half ago. And it didn't go great because both sides were unhappy. And we had a meeting this morning, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both just said, that didn't go well, did it? Let's start over. That taught me a lesson. Like, I wasn't willing to back down. He wasn't willing to back down. But then we both came to the table today and said, you know what? I can live with that if you can live with this.
Like, come on. If I could work with anyone, it would be her. I mean, okay, first of all, let's break that down. So first of all, the whole, if the answer is no, you're talking to the wrong person,
Mm.
1,000% this industry. and look at it that as so many different ways. You call someone, they're in charge of shipping. I don't handle that decision, or no, I'm not looking to change who I'm working with right now. Who's in charge of money in a business? CFO. Try the CFO. If you talk to someone and our CEO makes all the decisions of changes, talk to the CEO. Talk to the sales guy who can't get the margin that he wants because the shipping costs are too high. Talk to procurement who can't bring in the materials because the shipping costs are too high. Like there, that right there is this industry 1000%. I think that's a lot of times when I talk to people about maybe a sales not going through, it's because they're building the relationship with the wrong person. And a lot of times, I mean, that takes having a tough decision and going above someone, or even building a relationship with someone who eventually could help down the line. So I love that aspect. And then the other point that you brought up too is like, and I think I see this a lot of times in the tech side, is like, both parties need to win. Like so many times I think people just close tech deals in this industry to just close deals and keep it moving forward. But it's like, did you actually really help them with their process? Did you make sure that you have a change management process in place? Are they well trained on how to use this system? Again, when I hear people say like a tech isn't working, it's a lot of times not the tech. I mean, it's like saying like it's like reminds me of like my mom, who says like a lot of times will say like, oh, Netflix isn't working. It's like, no, you just like keep forgetting to update your iPad and it's not casting correctly, right? It's like that's teaching. It's definitely not the tech. It's likely you. Sorry. And then maybe the product's not right for you and where your business is right now, right? A lot of times that could be it as well. So I think I love that piece too, is like, how are we, don't just do a deal to do a deal. How are we looking at and helping both of us? And yeah, at the end of the day, closing a deal is going to be best for that sales rep on the tech side. But if it's someone who's going to be constantly going to your customer service desk asking for help, like it's not good for the company. And a lot of times that happens even in brokerage too, right? Like you land a customer, but yeah, like for instance, if you're growing, if you're a small growing brokerage and you land GM who wants you to pay in 100 or it's going to pay you in 120 days, like that's not a great customer to have 25% of your revenue into. Like, so I love. Listen, I'm again. I stand for the Dashians over there, the Kardashians. You could bear. I'd love to hear the arguments because I'll look right through.
I mean, when all else fails, you just pimp out your daughter on a sex tape and then blow up your entire family in order to make millions and sometimes billions.
You know what? Done worth billions. No, it's like it's incredible, and it's it's interesting. I remember there's an episode. When she wore the Marilyn Monroe dress. This is exactly Chris saved the day. She came into the room and said they weren't going to let her wear that dress.
Yeah,
they were like, well, she couldn't fit in it, so she lost a bunch of weight. But even when she could fit into it, they were not. It wasn't until like 24 hours before the show that they finally agreed to it. And it's because Chris said we're talking to the wrong person. And I guarantee called because I think it's Ripley's, believe it or not, that owns it technically.
Oh wow.
Same thing. Like, listen, you're gonna get the marketing from doing this. Clearly, she wants to get this done. Like that only happened because Savior Kris Jenner came in last second and talked to the right person. I remember her coming into the episode. It's like, you're not talking to the right person, Kim. Give me 24 hours. We'll get this done. And so.
I mean, she is a hell of a manager. I can't, fault her. I can fault some of and I can disagree with some of the messaging and some of the methods, especially around Kylie. I think Kylie is just such a disturbing case of setting beauty standards so high with two of your daughters that then the third daughter, Chloe, is pressured into getting all of this different plastic surgery and just establishing those unrealistic beauty standards. So then your youngest daughters, especially Kylie, are, getting lip injections and fillers before she is at the age of 20. If you look at photos of her now, she's like 26, 27. She looks 40. And so
she makes a hell of a lip liner and
No, she licensed her name to the companies that make a hell of a lip liner.
ColourPop.
That's how
She
all of this
licenses-
is working.
She licenses to ColourPop, and boy, have I enjoyed myself.
Which is all I cannot fault. Again, I cannot fault them for some of these business moves, but I do think that Chris is sort of the brainchild behind this, and that the daughters are just benefiting from it. Kim, I think, has another level. I think she's on the same level business understanding of her mom, but the rest of them are just sort of just following like sheep and just doing whatever Chris says.
She's not going to come on now. You need to get Nadia from Skims on your show to talk about their supply chain, because she's told me some incredible stories about Kim as a leader. But no, I love it. I love this argument.
Business-wise,
it's like my favorite. It's like arguing about like who's better, Rihanna or Beyonce. It's like, no, your argument's dumb, and it's Beyonce. But I'll listen to it. Like,
see, that's it. Yeah, that's a whole other argument that I'm not even qualified to give.
I just standards. If I was a billionaire, oh man.
Well, it's just it's a lot of the malicious things too, like selling diet pills or selling things like this, and pretending as if that's working, knowing that your audience is skews much lower. So you're not just, it's not just Skims and makeup lines and perfumes, which I think are reputable businesses, but it's some of these other decisions that the Kardashians have made that I do really have a problem with. And that's pushing a lot of these different unrealistic beauty standards and then lying essentially too. Yeah, I mean, Kim got sued for lying, for selling some of these diet pills. And so I just think that, Bitcoin, you know, too, but that, yeah, exactly. And so it's like these kinds of things, it's like, that's not responsible. You have enough money, you have enough prestige. Why do you feel the need to push these products that are never going to work, knowing that you have access to so much money, personal chefs, personal trainers, the best cosmetic surgeons in the world, even though Kylie's face is falling apart. But you have access to all of these things that nobody else really has access to, and you're pushing as if it's achievable. And that's what I don't like about how they've evolved into. I don't know.
I do want to put on public record, I am not a Kendall fan.
I used to be a.
I've heard some real world stories about her, because I do know
she's a nut job,
and they are not fun.
Allegedly,
but I would work for Miss Kris Jenner any day of the week. It's I like a lot of her deals, but I'm just saying, pimping out your daughter. I bet she's like a Griselda or whatever that, like the one lady, the new Netflix show is, right? Like, I bet you there's some crazy stuff, that she's got in business done. Like, I bet you she's just done some wild stuff, and I'd love to know it. Some some FourKites email type of stuff,
Which I'm sure, I've heard, especially from like internet rumors that, that Kris Jenner has, direct contacts with folks at Google, at different search engines. And so if there's a story that she doesn't she calls people and she will bury it. And I think that level of power is fascinating. I don't know. I've watched a couple recent documentaries on them, or like, internet style documentaries. And I just, I was a big fan of them for a while, but now I just think of it as so exhausting to have every moment of your life just managed from the aspect of making more money. Like, when do they get to take a day off? Like, when do they get to just say enough is enough?
Well, listen, thank God Northwest is here and she's picking up the bag now. To be honest with you, I was gonna actually send you a bunch of Northwest clips.
Oh my God. This is even more disturbing, is that they're starting to employ, they have a mini daycare at their home on all of their shows. And now that's the next sort of line, is getting all of these kids to start. And it's like, please just don't do the immoral things, or the things that are immoral. I guess that's a right phrase.
When Northwest, there's an episode Northwest comes in and she's like, you need to get an apartment, Mom, because Dad has an apartment and it's awesome. And I was like, that is the advice we in this $1 million house. She's God. Like, Dad's cooler because he lives in an apartment, Mom. And I'm like, love that. That's gonna make her not sleep tonight. So that's
Pray for those kids. Pray for those kids, because the men that the Kardashians have left in their wake is also little concerning. Like, just
Oh, come on, Lord Disick, till I die.
Lamar Odom, Chris
Yeah.
Humphries, even though he's kind of an asshole, but still, like,
Oh,
you know,
those were
his
good
career was
seasons.
ruined. Kanye's
If anyone sees me on the plane to Manifest, I'm watching the latest season of the Kardashians. It's like my go-to on flights. It kills the time, and I'm just dying laughing the whole time.
Okay, let's move on into another part of hustling. Let's move on to pick our favorite freight businesses, hustles going on right now. I think that you have one that I definitely wanted to talk about, and that is making swag into merch. So let me go ahead and share this tab. And can you kind of set the stage for us here? What are we looking at?
Just give me one second. I'm sending an important email. Done so. Okay. Perfect.
We're multitasking.
So this is did you have the picture up? Perfect.
Yes.
I saw this the other day right after I wrote an article about Optum, and I was like, what is this t-shirt? I must have. and so my side hustle, I think that more companies should consider. I mean, we've clearly Freight Bandit with his a magazine is going for it. Reed with his hats. We need to stop giving out so much awesome free swag and start selling merch. I would buy that shirt. That's how cool that is.
And for folks who maybe just be listening, it's what is it, like Skull and Bones driving a truck?
Yeah,
Is that an accurate?
Yeah, it's like it looks like a truck driver. He's got a beard. He's got a cool cowboy hat on, but it's like he's a skeleton man, and he's
waiting to get loaded. That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's a cool. Yeah, exactly. He's detention forever, which is again add that to the back of his shirt. Even bought it even more.
Right.
I just think, we see so many artists in particular that's like, this is like generation of merch. I mean, you see people even buying like old school, like Leonard Skinner shirts and for well over a decent price of a shirt these days. Like, I would love to see this industry get more and more into merch. I'm working on some of it myself, but
Hey.
I love it. Who doesn't love and it's clever too. Like, I don't want just your company name on it. Like, I want I'm actually speaking of merch I bought, I'm wearing the Matt's merch right now.
Nice.
I love this stuff, and I think it's so cool, and like this hat is or this shirt is so cool, and I see so many different things like Dooner posts as well, and it's like, why aren't companies selling this?
The ornaments, the Christmas ornaments is one thing that he does that I love. And I think that's so smart, because it's one of those things that I'll be honest, I'm kind of, especially when it comes to companies, I really have to love your company in order to sport the merch. And it has to be good quality merch. Don't be making like this, heavy, thick cotton t-shirt that's, I can't stand. It needs to be really high quality merch. And
OTR Clutch, shout out to you guys. That shirt I got in the mail. Oh, softest shirt of all time. C.H. Robinson, shout out to you. Softest shirt of all time.
Oh, I would softest freight shirt that I own right now is Convoy, so RIP to that, because it's a great shirt.
I've been like giving out Convoy swag like as like gifts, as like now like tokens of like history.
Right. Just start
like I've got so much of their swag, and I'm just like, here, this is cool, right? Like I've got a magazine back there that's like the future of trucking, and I'm like, wow, this should be framed.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Definitely more merch needs to be coming out from our industry, but for God's sakes, like we're about to head to Manifest next week. I do not need any more water bottles, pens. I do not need any more of notebooks. I'm good. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that like you're absolutely just like, I'm tired? I would kind of put hats on that list too. I'm just frankly not going to wear them.
Yeah. Unless they're cool. Like Convoy had some cool hats. And I've been giving those away. Yeah. Like I would take like a bucket, like a safari hat, like at least get like cool with the hats. That would
that's a good point.
Don't give me a trucker hat. Don't give me.
God's sakes.
Please God, don't give me a trucker hat. It doesn't look good on any woman. That's a statement I'll make. And just don't give it to me. Give me a dad hat, worst case. But
Okay,
yeah,
so real quick, because I know that we're running
yes,
up against the clock here. One that I did want to mention as far as like freight businesses, and the reason I want to mention this one is because I really noticed how the shift was happening. So Matt Silver, everybody kind of knows him within the freight industry. He just came. He was stealth, or coming out of stealth mode, I think is how Reed
yeah,
says it. He came out of stealth mode, launched his business Cargado. And I wanted to talk about this one because I noticed a very strong shift in his social media. It was basically, kind of everyone that joins Twitter, they kind of just start shit posting, and it's kind of what I kind of shit post for the majority of a lot of my tweets, and a lot of my posts. A lot of it is, of course, comes from old shows that I've done, but for him in particular, I specifically noticed this because he kind of, I don't want to say like shit posting, but he went from normal posting to very strategically talking about cross-border shipping. And it was
true.
so much that I noticed that I'm like, I was like, he is making a very conscious shift with his social messaging. And then come to find out, like I'm reading through a lot of the, the official announcement after he came out of stealth mode. And one of his investors is a guy named Sahil Bloom, I believe is his full name. But he's very like Twitter famous. He does a lot of like inspirational businessy type messaging. But he
Nice.
specifically has been consulting Matt on how to upgrade his social media presence. And so if you really want like a good use case of freight marketing and freight media, it was enough. I didn't know anything about what Matt was doing on the side with building this business, Cargado, but I did notice the shift in his social media messaging. And so I think that was the reason I wanted to bring it up is that I thought that was a brilliant shift for him in retrospect, because it's a good case study of what other founders, other business leaders can do as well. That even though you've started up on a platform, maybe you've talked about one thing, but you can consciously shift how you're interacting on social media and what you're talking about and who you're communicating to simply by making more of a conscious effort about what you're going to talk about and why that target audience should care. So kudos to him for really nailing in on that messaging. And so that was one of the investors in Cargado. In to that company was the guy who is kind of breaking down of what he should be sharing and what he should not be sharing. And so that kind of rounds out that part of the show. Let's head into our last segment, and that is basically our source to porch. So the logistics of let's run through them pretty quickly. Do you want to intro yours first, or you want me to do mine?
You can do yours first.
Okay. So I am kind of a nerd about magnets. I love magnets ever since I was a kid. I just thought the way that they work is so interesting because you can take the sides of it. I just vividly remember being a little kid and trying to, push the magnets together and you feel that force against it. And I'm like, what's happening here?
Magic.
How is that created? And so I thought to myself the other day, I said, how the hell are magnets made? And just I would play a clip about it, but it's essentially the, electrons, basically electrons. No, I'm just going to play the clip. Let's just play this because it needs to be played. Let's do this. Here we go.
How the do magnets work? Einstein showed us that if something is moving in your point of view, it looks shorter in the direction of movement. Where there is an electric current, to us, the moving negative electrons look like they balance out the stationary positive nuclei. But in the electron's point of view, the positive nuclei are moving and therefore closer together. Negative and positive charges attract. So an electron moving outside of the wire can be attracted to the higher density of positive charge. In some materials like fridge magnets, the atoms act like small loops of current. If these loops are all in the same direction, they add up outside and cancel out inside. You're left with an effective current on the surface of the magnet that makes a magnetic field that can attract things containing movable charges like metals.
And so if that is not cool enough, now we go to the part about actually like magnetizing the different metals. And so you take different metals and how are they actually like manufactured? And so I found a manufacturer over in China that had post videos on how magnets are actually charged. So
familiar with magnets.
But do you know how it's made?
Exact voice. But do you know how it's made?
Before magnetization,
What?
magnetization completed.
What?
Now they're magnets.
Oh.
And so if you are just listening or just watching this, or no, if you're just listening and not watching the actual video, I needed to get that right. Basically what they did is they took a box full of metals, little metal objects, like what you would picture, a bunch of magnets, but they're not magnetized yet. And so then they put them in a giant machine, another magnet, and it helps to magnetize them by firing in those different electrons and, making the different magnetic fields around it. And it's such an interesting process, because then you have to think about the aspect of how the hell do you ship these things? Because commonly when magnets are shipped,
No.
especially if you order them in small quantities, they're shipped in just regular envelopes. And so it's a common issue whenever you're shipping them that they'll just get stuck to the envelope itself, will get stuck to the side of a delivery truck and your package just gets lost. So there's
What?
regulations around different magnets and how you can ship them. If they're over a certain level, they can't go on an airplane because it will mess with some of the electronic equipment on an airplane. And so what a lot of these shippers do, or a lot of these manufacturers do to ship their goods, is they package the magnets in a creative way. And so then it has less, or they fill it up essentially. Some manufacturers will put wood around the inside of the box, all around it. And so the magnets hopefully will stay contained within the box and not mess up during the shipment process. So it's a special kind of packaging that they need to go through. There's a lot of regulations around it. And so I thought that, that was just an interesting sort of side note of, just the coolness of magnets. And then, well, how the hell are they actually shipped? Because then they're used in all of this different, industrial equipment. Some trains are powered by magnets. So it just brings up like that interesting use
Wow.
case of like, we have this really cool just technology that's existed for as long as I know that it's existed, and that we can actually create new magnets that hold that magnetic power for hundreds of years. And so I just thought that that entire process was cool. And the fact that it's kind of funny that, if you try to ship them and then they just end up, getting stuck on the side of like a UPS truck.
Well, it's like, imagine shipping, like, say, the little toaster. Remember that movie?
Oh, the Great Little Toaster.
Yeah, I remember the end of it. That giant magnet like gets all the cars and stuff. Like, imagine trying to ship one of those. That'd be
Right.
crazy.
And that, oh yeah, I should probably bring like a picture of that up, but I know we don't have time to sort of bring up that
Yes.
portion of it, because we're both up against the clock here. So let me bring up yours, the logistics of Valentine's Day flowers.
Yeah, if you just want to play like the first minute or so, is fine, and then I can go through some of it too.
Perfect.
Every year, more than 1 billion flowers come into the US for Valentine's Day. Most come from massive farms in Colombia. But these roses have as little as 48 hours to get cut and flown to Miami before they wilt.
They have a short lifetime and thus require the most rapid form of transportation, and that is by air.
It takes a vast network of farmers, air cargo, coolers, and customs officers working 24/7.
Leading up to Valentine's Day, the amount of flowers coming to the airport double and triple.
Treating these flowers right is even a matter of protecting the U.S.
The danger of an exotic pest to establish in the United States, our food supply is affected.
From greenhouse to gift, we follow the journey of your Valentine's Day bouquet.
You can pause that there.
70% of
Interesting enough, it's actually at Manifest, someone on my panel for kind of refrigerated cold chain shipping. This is like their brokerage that does mostly flowers.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully you guys will be able to hear some stories, but interesting stuff they kind of bring up in this video. Planes themselves can hold up to 1 million flowers at a time. They bring it up. Yeah, 70% of flowers in the U.S. for Valentine's Day come from Colombia, and one or two of like the largest flower producers down there. 80% of those flowers that come in for Valentine's Day come in through the Miami airport. They set it on there. They have 48 hours to pick and deliver them. That's
crazy.
insane, right? Yeah, crazy. And then this is the other part I think is cool. And I think Noi actually wrote an article slightly about this a couple years ago when I first started. They've actually done the math, and in order to make sure that bugs and drugs and all this stuff don't get in through this mass group of flowers, they have to inspect at least 2%, which is kind of cool. I would think maybe it would be more, but 2% is the number where they're going to catch most of the issues. But the big problem is bugs. There was a situation a couple years ago where they did unfortunately let a bug into Florida, and they lost in that year $3 million worth of produce.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the state. Sunflowers are actually more risky to bring in pests and different pesticides than roses. Roses are the least risky flower to import in. And last year, 700 million stems of Valentine's flowers were inspected through that Miami airport. So
that's insane.
Talk about that 2%, right? Insane. Consider that. Don't be the guy who buys flowers last minute, because it takes 48 hours to get here to begin with. So make sure you order those flowers now so they're good to go. That's the moral of this story.
Yeah, I think too, it's one of those moments, because I cover the logistics of Mother's Day flowers, which is very similar to Valentine's Day flowers. But I never knew that airplanes could be refrigerated. And that was the first time I ever found out about that. And they have to be refrigerated to ship the flowers from point A to B, which is insane amount of logistics that's involved.
Yeah.
From picking to delivering 48 hours, which is nuts.
Well, unfortunately, we have to end this here because
it's
our fault. We talked for too long beforehand, but don't worry, we'll be at Manifest.
As we do.
Yeah.
So let me we'll round it out here. Another great show. Glad to have the first one under our belts for 2024. All of us will be at Manifest next week, where we'll be recording another special edition of Freight Friends live on the conference floor. Shout out to Zell Logistics in order for helping to make that happen and providing all of the equipment too. That's always a nice bonus. But until then, Grace, where can folks follow you, follow more of your work, all that good stuff?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. You can listen to my radio show on SiriusXM channel 146 from 5 to 7, Monday through Friday. And find me, reach out to me if you have. I'm actually working on some FreightWaves events for 3PLs and small carrier summit too. So if you're interested in being a part of that too, let me know.
Heck yeah. Great work. See you next week. And that's all for now. Shout out to Manifest. We'll see y'all.